Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Garage with Bonesaw. Before I start this review, I'd just like to give a little bit of fair warning. I do have a cold at the moment, so if I sound a bit mumbly in this video, that's because of that. But, my sickness aside, let's get on with the review. Today we're looking at the German Tier 7 heavy tank, the Tiger P, better known as the Borscht Tiger. Now, this tank was developed in the early 1940s, 1941 to 1942, to fulfill the German Army's requirement for a heavy breakthrough tank in the VK-45 project. As you can probably see, this tank was developed off of the VK-3001P, which was the Porsche entry into the VK-30 project, and overall has a very similar layout, except just scaled up. It has dramatically increased frontal armour with 200mm, and it still uses that same petrol-electric transmission type. So it has two motors in the centre here, with a combined power of 670 horsepower with the top engines, and those drove two dynamos, which then powered a set of electric engines at the back, which drove these rear drive sprockets. And it had all the advantages of a petrol-electric drive system, of giving that very high torque ratio. But it still had those downsides of being very hard to cool. As you can see, it has two very large coolant intakes on the top deck, as well as over the engines in the rear. Now, interestingly enough, the turret on this tank was not the original turret designed for the VK-45 project. The original turret was designed by Krupp, because Germany tended to distribute their designs. Often they'd have the hulls of a tank designed by one company, the guns designed by another, and the turrets designed specifically for those guns and for the hulls by yet another company. So Krupp were originally the ones supposed to be building the turret. And as you can see on my Tiger tank, this is the stock turret. That's what it originally looked like. But as you can see, it's built from a fair few pieces. You've got this big frontal plate here, as well as the side plates and the rear plate, which are all dovetailed and welded together, as well as the roof plating, the gun mantlet, and that was complicated to produce and also not that large. You can also notice a very distinct similarity to some of the medium tanks, such as the VK-3601H. As you can see, the turret's virtually identical. Beg pardon once again. So Porsche developed his own turret, and this one's much simpler to manufacture. As you can see, it's just essentially a big horseshoe of 80mm plate bent around in a semicircle. It then has a trunnion mounting on the front for the mantlet and gun, as well as two roof plates that are welded together. This gave a much larger turret volume, and it was actually the turret that was eventually adopted for the production Tigers. Interestingly enough, Porsche actually built quite a few of these tanks. He built about 100, even though they weren't accepted for service. He pretty much assumed that the design was so good that the Wehrmacht were going to pick it no matter what. And it turned out he was wrong. It was the tank was actually somewhat unreliable due to the overheating issues, so the Henschel design was picked in favour of the Porsche tank. However, the turret proved very successful and was in fact used on the Henschel Tiger. So much so that the initial production Porsche turrets, like this one, which have the bevels along the edge and on the underside of the gun mantlet, were actually used. Those were originally to allow the turret to traverse over these air intakes on the back deck of the Porsche Tiger, but the Henschel Tiger does not have these air intakes, but they can be seen on the bevels can be seen on some tanks. The Tiger 131 in Bovington Tank Museum, probably the most famous remaining Tiger in the world, because it is the only running Tiger in existence at the moment, has one of these initial production turrets. About 90 of them were used, and you can see the distinct bevels on the turret of that tank. Now, enough of the history. Pardon. In World of Tanks, the Porsche Tiger is a very, very effective vehicle. Much like its cousin, the Ferdinand, which can be researched from this tank, it is a very durable tank with some very potent firepower. It's also surprisingly fast. It moves faster than the Tiger does, and it also accelerates quite well. Its only downside is it is somewhat sluggish on the traverse. In terms of armour, you have 200mm of frontal armour, which is very, very good for Tier 7. makes you very durable. You only have two real weak points on the front of the hull. That is the machine gun port and the driver's port. They are quite small, but they are still penetrable. This tank does not have a front-mounted transmission due to the petrol-electric drive system, so shots to the lower glacis will not result in you catching on fire, and even then the lower glacis is quite steeply angled. Much like with the ordinary Tiger, the Tiger H, angling this tank will make you very effective in combat and allow you to bounce even more enemy fire. However, you do have to pay attention to these angled off sides here, because your tank is effectively a hexagon. And if you angle yourself too sharply at the enemy, for instance putting them at about a 10 o'clock position, they will have a flat shot at this cut-off section, which will allow them to penetrate more easily. So generally you want to keep the enemy in a much tighter angle, generally keeping the front corners of these cut-off sections pointing towards whatever your intended target is. That will give you a much superior angle, as the only facing they can really shoot at will be a triangle shape. Overall, you need to make sure that, once again, apologies for that, you need to make sure that the enemy really don't get in close to be able to flank you, as you only have 80mm of side and rear armour, which can result in you taking some significant damage if the enemy get close. You do have 1,450 hit points, which is the same as a regular Tiger, meaning you can afford to take some hits. However, it's important to make the most of your armour. This tank really does excel at range because of the very effective L71 88mm gun, and also because the turret on this tank, I guess you could say, is the biggest frontal weak spot. It only has 120mm of frontal armour, which can be quite easily penetrated at tier 7. It also has this very early model Commander's cupola, the very tall tower-style cupola, and that can be quite easily penetrated at close range. So you generally want to stay at a distance where the enemy don't have easy shots at your turret and your cupola. Your gun has 3.4 accuracy, 0.34 accuracy, so you will generally outrange your enemies, allowing you to engage them at a more favourable combat distance. And you do have 203mm of penetration, meaning you will cut through most of the things you face at tier 7. This tank can be somewhat prone to being tracked. The tracks aren't huge, but enemies know that your traverse is bad and that your side hull is weak, so they will attempt to blow your tracks off and outmaneuver you. So a repair kit is important. In terms of modules, I'd say an enhanced gun laying drive is certainly a very viable option to increase the aim time of that gun. Binocular telescope is good if you really want to excel at that range combat, because it can increase your view range to a very substantial 400 meters plus. Enhanced torsion bars can be a very effective choice to decrease the chance of getting tracked. Filling the tanks with CO2, I don't think it's absolutely necessary on this tank. They do catch fire, but not as frequently as the Tiger does. A heavy spall liner can be a very effective choice to counter high explosive shells against your frontal armour. Large caliber tank gun rammer is also very effective, as is a toolbox. So for the most part, you have plenty of flexibility to tailor this tank to what you want in your playstyle. A repair kit is very important for this tank. You, generally speaking, will take a lot of fire, and it's important to keep your tank functional. A fire extinguisher, once again, can be a viable choice. However, I don't run one. I have yet to be set on fire in this tank. Generally speaking, most enemies don't really aim for the locations that can set this tank on fire. The actual place if you do want to shoot one of these things to set it on alight, is actually for this middle section. You can see the engine access hatches there. That's where the petrol engines are. So overall, fire is not a huge hazard in this tank. In terms of perks and skills, I'm just running jack of all trades on my commander. This tank was carried over my VK 3001P, so I have not got them trained to 100% yet, but jack of all trades is useful. Armour on the gun, because you definitely will take some hits to that gun mantlet, which may damage your gun. Off-road driving is very good on this tank, as it's can be somewhat sluggish in soft terrain, especially when traversing. And repairs on the radio man and loader will help you keep this tank combat effective. In terms of research, an important note I would like to make is that if you look at the research tree for this tank, the 88cm L71 is researched independently of the second turret, and you can in fact mount this gun on the stock turret. In some of the footage I will be showing you, I am in fact using the stock turret. Now, the same is not true for this tank's cousin, the Tiger H. Now, the Tiger H, with this stock turret, cannot mount the L71. You have to unlock the Borscht term for the Tiger H, after which you can then mount the L71. And if you actually look at the research tree for a Tiger H, you'll see that you actually have to go through the turret to get to the gun. So what I would recommend would be to, if you have the flexibility to be able to go up both trees, get the Borscht Tiger first. Unlock this gun on the Borscht Tiger first. That way, when you struggle through the early grind of the Tiger H, as soon as you've unlocked this turret, you have a viable gun to stick on this tank. Otherwise, you will have to struggle through the L56. And while the L56 is great at tier 7, it is very much inadequate. So it's great at tier 6, very much inadequate at tier 7. You really will struggle with your damage output. And as the standard target, the Tiger H, can be somewhat fragile compared to the Borscht Tiger, you really do need the effectiveness of that long gun. Overall, the Borscht Tiger is a very effective heavy tank, and as tier 7 is the first time Germans get heavies, it very much feels like a heavy tank should. You have plenty of armour on the front, you can afford to take a few hits with that health, and your gun can be a very effective threat to the enemy. And so played correctly, this tank is a very, very effective asset on the battlefield, and you can have some tremendously entertaining and effective games in this tank, earning quite a lot of XP. So here we are on Sand River in the German tier 7 heavy tank, the Borscht Tiger. Now the Borscht Tiger is a very typical heavy tank, very heavy frontal armour. Not particularly fast, but it does get up to its top speed very quickly, and it has quite an effective 88mm gun. I've only had this tank for a short period of time, but already it's proven to be a very effective tank, and I'm very pleased to have one in my garage. Now, normally in a heavy tank on Sand River, you move up to the C and D sectors up around C6, C7. At the choke point between the ridge and the dunes. However, the Borscht Tiger, like a lot of German tanks, doesn't have amazing gun depression, and on that downward slope we would be at a disadvantage. So instead we're going to move it down along the K and J sector, where we'll have some nice cover in between these dunes from the any fire that may come in from the town. And we can use that very accurate and very effective 88mm gun on any enemies who try to crest this ridge over here. So we've already spotted some enemies directly ahead of us. We've got a tank destroyer and a medium tank. That's a Jagdpanther and a Comet. Now I'm a little bit concerned about our deployments to the north. We seem to only have 2 medium tanks up on that rock ridge and some heavy tanks moving up. However, it's early game still, and those heavy tanks could still get into a useful position. We do have, however, a substantial push setting up down here. I'm just aiming in on this ridge to provide cover for the lead tanks in our formation. We've got a T29 up front, followed by a KV3. Alright, so the Jagdpanther hits me in the track, and I'm not sure what gun he's using, but he doesn't seem to be able to penetrate me for most of the game. I think he's using the L70 75mm gun. So I put a nice hit into him, and then follow up on this Cromwell, which has been immobilized. Another good, just above average roll. And follow up with a second shot to finish the Comet. Bounce a second shot from the Jagdpanther. And a third shot.
Alright, and that shot goes low, unfortunately not killing the Jagdpanther. I'll try for another one, but this will probably bounce off his mantlet. Yeah, and after this he knows that he's fated to die by my hand, so he's retreating back down the ridge. This Panzer IV has exposed himself, so I'll finish him off. And move along here. Now this is a bit of a tricky bit, and we have to take this carefully. There is a VK-3001P on our flank. Try to get a shot off on him, but the KV-3 finishes him off. Now the Jagdpanther's just blown my track off, and I'll try to get a shot on him, but unfortunately he retreats before my gun is aimed. The tricky bit right here is just getting around this corner. The ground is not very even, which will cause some problems for the Borscht Tiger. And the Borscht Tiger does not traverse particularly well, so getting around this corner without getting shot in the side may require a little bit of deliberate thinking and trying not to be too rash. So the Black Prince puts a shot through my turret, which he can do easily. The frontal turret of this tank is only about 120mm thick with the top turret, which I have equipped here. And that really makes it your main weak point, but it really can bounce shots from much lower tier vehicles, generally the tier 6 and tier 7 medium tanks. Just trying to get to a position here where I can fire upon the enemy without exposing too much of myself to return fire. Fortunately I take a hit from the enemy Borscht Tiger, he blows my track off. And I take a hit in the optics from that IS. And unfortunately the shot there did not connect where I wanted to and bounced off the Borscht Tiger. So I'm going to move around to avoid taking any further damage. Even though the armour on this tank is substantial, you don't want to take too many hits, especially from guns of the caliber facing me. I know that I can, on my hull at least, bounce shots from the IS. The Black Prince and the Borscht Tiger, on the other hand, are fully capable of penetrating both my hull and my turret. So I will be attempting to angle myself. Our KV-3 is taking out the Tiger Porsche, and I will put a shot into this IS as he comes over the ridge. Big shot into his cupola there. Unfortunately it was a slightly below average damage roll, but I do know that I have taken out his commander, so he's going to become a lot less combat effective, and our T-29 will finish off the IS. Alright. Now that Black Prince is backing off, and I don't want him to get into too dug in of position, so I'm going to lead the charge over here. I know I will take some hits, but I can take some damage from him. The Black Prince's gun does not do tremendous amounts of damage per hit, and I have plenty of health remaining, so I can just get hull down behind this IS, put a shot to his flank, hide myself behind the IS wreckage, and come around to finish him off with flank shot. So that's pretty much the game one for us. The enemy have a Stuk and a T-49 remaining. And as you can see there, plenty of hits on my frontal hull. They were aiming for my machine gun port there. The Tiger P does have some weak points on the front of its hull, especially those two cut-off corners on the sides that you have to be very careful with when angling yourself. However, overall it is a very, very durable tank, and it excels in fights like this where you can have your flank secured by terrain and really only give the enemy your front to shoot at. That very long 88mm gun, the L70, is a very effective, L71 is a very effective tank killing weapon with a very high 200+ millimeters of penetration. I could easily penetrate most of the vehicles I was facing in this match. So here we are in the Borscht Tiger again. As you'll notice, this game actually took place before the previous footage that I showed you, as I have the stock turret on this tank, which can mount the long 88mm gun. It's an encounter battle, and I'm moving up here to guard against an enemy push through the magic forest. Now, at this moment I'm actually really concerned, because most of our team is moving off to the cap. I'm pretty much the only one guarding the forest here, and that means that the enemy could very easily put out a heavy push, sweep around this flank, and just absolutely annihilate our forces on the cap. So I'm just angling myself to try and get a perfect angle against anything that might be coming from the forest, and just sitting still and waiting. I'm really hoping that that heavy tank back at spawn is going to come over here, but he appears to just be sitting there for the most part. I've already made some first contacts, however none of them are really valid targets for me, and it's really just playing the waiting game. And my biggest fears at the moment are that Centurion or the T-34, something with a very high penetration gun, will come through the forest, and I'll be forced to fight against them. And lo and behold, I was right, T-34 is coming. So I'm just going to aim in, try and get a good shot at him. I don't really want to fire right now, but I figured I might try to blow his track off. Unfortunately, it goes high and hits the turret. I notify everyone of his existence over here, but I've got to back around, fire a blind shot at him, to just try and at least get him scared. And also to back off to avoid getting shot in the flank by that medium over in the town. Now he's going to try and come over this hill to use the advantage of his gun depression, and I'm going to try and get around the low ground so that he will have to face me in an area that's advantageous to me. So I put the first hit into him, bounce his shot, which was fortunate, good angling there. Follow up with the second shot, and that shot wasn't actually from the T-34, that was a shot from his buddy who's a Comet. Thankfully that bounced as well. Second shot from the T-34 misses, so I'll move up while he's reloading, try and put some more shots into him. Alright, that blows his track off and does a nice 253 damage hit. And our G-Dub Panther's noticed what's going on, so he's giving me some fire support, which is always helpful. Just line up another shot on this T-34. Put it into his rear. Nice 250 damage roll, very close to the average there, so consistent damage output is always good in a fight like this. Move up again, bounce the shot, finish off the T-34. Now I know that Comet is around here somewhere, and I don't want to give him an opportunity to get around behind me, so I'm going to try and circle around and find him. Alright, at this point in time the enemy have pushed onto the cap, and I'm a little bit concerned. However, I have to deal with matters over here. Just thanking the G-Dub Panther for helping me out against that T-34. It's always good to help your allies when they help you. Teamwork wins games. Alright, so I missed that shot on the Comet. I have no idea why he tried to ram me. He would have lost his track 100% of the time he tried that. And the outcome was very little damage to me. He puts another one through my front plate, and I will finish him off with my next shot. So that's this flank secured as far as I know. However, a T1 Heavy is about to make his appearance over here, trying to outflank us. So he's just moved through the town. I'm going to give him the good news, re-angle myself so he can't damage me. Puts a shot into my track. Just wait for the reload. Put one into his side plate and finish him off. Alright, now I'm going to move up via the town to try and outflank the cap. And that way we can clear off the cap and encircle it to gain victory. I am just a little bit worried that that Panther M10 or the M21, T21, sorry, any of the other vehicles might be lurking in the forest, but we've got spots on most of them, so I'm going to advance through the town now, as I'm pretty sure I won't get ambushed. As you can see, the Tiger P isn't exactly a race car, but it's still quite quick. It achieves its top speed very swiftly, even with 2 broken tracks. I'm still cruising along at a comfy 25 kilometers an hour. It turns quite well at speed. It doesn't turn very well when you're stationary, it is quite slow, but when you're getting from place to place you can maneuver quite well. We've lost a Hellcat to the KV-1S, and the enemy are still dug in on the edge of the cap, so right now it's really up to me and this other heavy tank with me, I do believe he's a Tiger, to outflank and secure the cap. Right, The enemy have pushed up a little bit, but they're going to retreat back onto the cap in a second. That KV-1S is reaping a bit of a toll. He's taken out both Hellcat and a Jagdpanther, which isn't good, but our Ferdinand's already got one kill, and he seems to be resisting most of the enemy advances. Alright, so now circling around on the cap. Just being careful, I don't want to present too much of my turret on my tracks on this advance. Just parking here and wait for the T-21 to come around. T-20, sorry. Put a shot into his rear plate. Panther M10's damaged my turret ring, thankfully hasn't jammed it. And I will finish off the T-20. Now I'm not quite sure where that Panther M10 is. Oh no, wait, he's been taken out. That was fortunate. And all that leaves is the remaining tanks, the Panther M10 and I do believe the T-21. So that's the game pretty much won for us. We're just going to group up on the cap and secure the area, just to make sure that the light tank doesn't spot us and that the GW Panther doesn't start dropping shells on us. If I took a hit from that GW Panther now, I would most certainly die. The Borscht Tiger, as you can see, is a very effective heavy tank. With that top gun, it is more than capable of taking on tanks above its tier, as in the case of that very powerful T-34, as well as easily handling enemy medium tanks such as that Comet and the other heavy tanks such as the T-1.